again here in Bridges of Light.
Yes, hello everybody. Here we are on Bridges of Light International. A new episode with me, Arianna Mendo.
And Enrico Gelain.
And tonight we are going to fly to some beautiful islands that stretching in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and they are the famous, renowned Canary Islands.
These are volcanic islands, more or less 100 kilometers far away from the African coast, belonging to Spain. So you can speak Spanish there, and but also English and also Italian, because it's really international vacation holiday spot.
Yes, it's a place that we know very well because we've been going to the Canary Islands to spend our winter time for 5 years now. So it's quite a long time, let's say, and every year we take some time to visit some of these 8 islands that are part of this archipelago. Okay, I see here Mariella. Good evening. Welcome to our our program. Nice to see you here. Yes, so as I was saying, we know these islands quite well, and actually we have also studied a master in tourism at the University of La Laguna, which is the university of the island of Tenerife. And so we know quite a lot about the Canary Islands, and we have already taken people to visit some of the special places of these islands. There's a lot to discover on the Canary Islands. They are not just sea and beautiful beaches, but there is a lot more to see there, really a lot more. And tonight, so what we are going to do with you is to open up to you this quite hidden
world.
Yes, corners of these beautiful islands. And hello and welcome to Nevin. Good evening to you, and good evening to Silvia. Hello. Yeah, happy to see you here. Okay, so yeah, there are lots of things to say about the Canary Islands, and anyway, we would like to start with the history of this island. Oh, Paula, hello, happy to see you here. And we would actually like to start with the history of the Canary Islands. There are really some interesting things to discover. Yeah, so we start with the first slide. Okay, this is a pyramid. Yeah, because there are pyramids even on the Canary Islands. But we are going back to the pyramids a bit later on. First of all, I would like to show the position, the location of these islands. All right, so you see here the 8 islands that are part of this archipelago. As Enrico was saying, they are volcanic islands, and actually they emerged from the ocean, let's say in between 12 million and 1,700,000 years ago. So they are not really that old. They are old, of course, but not really that old anyway.
Like all the volcanic places on Earth, actually.
Yes. Yes. So you see this nice location of the islands. They are quite small islands, as you see. And what is interesting about these islands is that even if they have a common ground, let's say, they all differ. And so it is really interesting to go and see each of them, because they all have, each of these islands has a very specific mood, if you like.
Yeah. And kind of energy and frequency also, of course.
Yeah, that's right. Right, so let's start, as we were saying, let's start with the history of these islands. Here you see some statues reproducing the kings of these islands before the Spanish conquest. Yes, because these islands were, of course, inhabited before the Spanish arrived on the islands to conquer them. And as you can see, these kings were really very powerful, very elegant, if you like. They're very fascinating, as you see. Their gesture, really elegant. Yes. These islands actually started to be inhabited around the 5th century BC, even if in some reports say that probably even around 1000 BC, probably some people arrived on the island.
There are some archaeological evidence.
Yeah.
So it's known, but it seems there are not so many people were there, actually.
Yeah.
Only a few of them came during those times. The biggest part of the immigration from the African coast began at the 5th century.
Yeah.
BC.
So, as we know, these people arrived from northern Africa, especially from the area of Morocco, and so the area which is known as the Berbers people. And here we can see some of of these people, how they looked like in ancient days. Of course, we know how they looked like because when the Spanish people arrived to conquer the islands, there were some historians together with the people, and they wrote about the people, the natives of these islands, and also they drew pictures of them, so we know how they looked like. And
wrote down also the alphabet, not really all the language, but some names of persons and places.
Yeah. And
so we have some idea of how they spoke. And on the left, you can see a friend of us, of ours, and he poses as a native, but actually he really has quite a big percentage of DNA inside his blood of natives of these islands.
Yes.
And of course, it does that for tourism, for the tourists to take pictures of him. But actually, he's quite fond of archaeology, so it's very expert. So his reconstruction are very precise, and he has quite a lot of gadgets and tools used by the natives.
So it is really interesting to meet him. His name is Javier, and you see he has a very peculiar hat, and that used to be the hat of the shamans of these people, because these people that lived in villages had a shaman. Each village had a shaman, so the shaman was a very important, had a very important role in the life of these people who lived really very close to nature. You see on the right, you see that the eyes are quite clear, and his hair are reddish. Yeah, because we know that the Berbers who lived in the northern part of Africa before the Arabs arrived were of northern origin, and so for this reason they had this kind of hair and clear eyes. And they were very tall and very elegant people.
Very strong. The tattoos you see are actually pintaderas, which are objects the archaeologists have found with those symbols, and they think they use them to make a non-permanent tattoo on their skins, or to mark their properties, or had of course religions meanings. We know two symbols which are reproduction of the sun and the moon gods for them.
And because these islands do not have any metals, these people lived like in the Neolithic period in Europe until the conquest of the Spanish. So think about it, quite interesting, you know. They really lived like in Neolithic period. Yes. And here, what do we see, Enrico?
This is gofio, which is traditional native food, with the pottery and the spoons, artisanal homemade spoons they made with seashells. And gofio is toasted grains, which were then made like in powder. With Neolithic techniques. They made powder from these toasted grains in order to obtain this flour. It is a cereal flour, which was used everywhere in their cuisine, like inside milk to drink it, or inside
soups,
or to do other kinds of recipes.
Yeah, it was a very, very, it had a very, very important role in their diet. It is a very energetic kind of food, and so it really helped them to sustain their life.
This is the il molino, the wheel, the stone wheel used to
crash,
and make the powder out of the grains.
Yeah, you see, it's really like what we have in the Neolithic period in Europe. The same with the stones that they're used. Being volcanic islands, of course, they had obsidian, which was used as a tool.
And also you can see a carved stone, which is mysterious in its function, but actually everywhere in the world where we have megalithic structure, you can see these spheres, rock spheres, completely navigated,
very smooth.
So of course artificially made by humans. We really don't know the purpose. Probably it was a representation of the sun and the moon.
Or the moon, probably used for special rituals. And here we can see the kind of shoes that they had, of course made with animal skin, usually from the goat, because there we cannot find even nowadays cattle, and so there are just goats. There were just goats. So goat was another important part of their diet and their life. And all the animal skins, yes. Oh, and here something very special of the islands. Okay, these islands are very, very steep because you have to think that there are also very high mountains, and
of course they are conical volcanoes.
Yes.
And the land, the soil, the volcanic soil is very it can transform with water into ground and being deteriorated. So you really have a lot of
very steep, very steep
gorges.
Yeah,
there are a lot of gorges
and sorts of canyons. Yeah, and
ravines made out of a lot of waters and rain.
Yes, because in some parts of the islands you can get really quite a lot of rain, and so it is quite hard actually to walk there, you know. It's very tiring as well. And in those days, of course, the only way to move around the island was to go on foot. There were no other ways. Sometimes they could use small boats. But you have to think that those people in those days lived especially in the area of the mountains around 800 meters high, 1000.
Fertile lands.
Because they were fertile lands with water, spring water. And so they really had to move in very steep grounds. So they found a way to move more rapidly, you know, faster, using this special tool, this special rod. Beam. You see, it was really a special way because they had to go down this kind of rod, you know.
They are able to turn around the rod in order to keep the balance, in order for the rod not to go to fall down.
Yes.
So they really need, when they give themselves the jump, they really need to stop the jump. So they need to turn around to go down.
Yeah, and this is something, a kind of movement that they can actually make going down, but also going up. So both ways, you know, and you really need a very special ability to do so. Nowadays, there are very few people who still know how to do this, how to, let's say, walk in this special way, you know. Yeah. It's really, really very peculiar, but it's nice there are still people able to show us how this was done in ancient days.
Yeah, this is the hierarchy of those peoples, with the chief leaders on top, and the second in general was a ceremonial priest or shaman, and then we have the nobles, and the third level was made up of nobles and generals. They were not really military generals, but they could also act as such. And Harimaguadas were very special kind of women which were living apart from the village in a kind of
they were a kind of nuns we could actually say, you know,
sacred women.
Sacred priestesses. And so they had an important role in the society. So it was very hierarchical, with the king at the very top, and then we have you know, the normal people at the bottom, and then actually at the very, very bottom of their society, the lowest level. There we find the butchers, and we also find the people who used to embalm the bodies, because on the Canary Islands we can find a kind of mummification. It's one of the fewest people on Earth that used mummification as a kind of burial. Yes. And,
like in Egypt.
Yeah, like in Egypt. But in Egypt, they were considered very, very important. It was not the same on the Canary Islands. And this because if you had a role where you had to touch blood, this was considered somehow impure. And so it was the same with the person that was in charge of killing someone that was considered guilty of something very important. Was the same.
Yeah.
So they were at the very lowest level.
So
the
lowest
village.
level was not really violent people, but people which had to do
with the blood.
With blood.
Yes, and probably they we know that they had to live even outside the village, even not within the village.
This means the topmost part of the hierarchy was all about nobility. They were nobles. They were people. For them, it was very important to act like nobles with moral principles. This was very important for them as a shamanic culture. Noble people had an etiquette of being strong to help other peoples and to live with moral principles.
Yeah, so those who were chosen as kings were chosen because they had very special qualities. This is very important to underline. You needed to have qualities, moral qualities, to be chosen as a king, to become the king. Yeah.
Here we can see some pintaderas, so some of these ancient symbols they used.
They're very beautiful, yes.
Yeah.
So they lived in quite a simple way, according to nature, but at the same time they were developed as a society, very much developed, yeah, with principles and hierarchies.
These are the original pintaderas made out of terracotta. And of course, if you use some powders like red ochre on these pintaderas, you can make a tattoo out of these symbols.
Yes. And this is the language that was used by these people, and we know that the language is the so-called Tifinagh, so the language actually belonging to the area of northern Africa, and it is
Tuareg clan.
Yeah, sort of. Yes. The language that today is still spoken by the Tuareg in northern Africa.
The tribe is called Tamazight.
Yeah, Tamazight. But the thing is that because the people migrated a long time ago from the coast of northern Africa to reach the Canary Islands, the language that survived, especially in petroglyphs, cannot be translated because it is too different from the language that is the Tifinagh that is being spoken nowadays. And so nobody so far has been able to translate what has been found on the Canary Islands in this region. Yeah.
Actually, this alphabet was found everywhere in the Canary Islands and marked as chiseled as a petroglyph. So they found these writings in their sacred areas, but it's still a mystery about their cults and what they have decided to write.
Yeah, that's right. Why did these people migrate from Africa to the Canary Islands? We don't know, of course, but of course sometimes it can be that there were some economical problems, for example. That used to be always a reason, you know, to migrate to other places.
Probably also the invasion from the Roman Empire to the north part of Africa made them leave their lands.
Yes, because of course they didn't want to be conquered, you know, and so they were free people, and so some of them preferred to leave the land and explore and reach some new lands. Yeah, and here we have a slide showing one of their mummies. So you see that they knew very well how to preserve the bones, you know. They were not wrapped in the same way as in
linen clothes.
As the Egyptian ones. So the mummification, the ritual of mummification was slightly different from that performed in Egypt. And for example, they didn't keep the organs like the Egyptian did, but they were anyway very much clever in this
they used a lot of butter instead of oils and spices like in Egypt. So a lot of butter and grease, animal grease, and plants, of course, herbs.
Herbs, yes, herbs. Especially also some herbs taken from a typical tree that we can find only on the Canary Islands, which is the drago tree. Yeah, so an interesting thing is that as we find mummification, here we have another slide about it.
Trepanation.
An interesting thing about this is that these people knew how to mummify, and this could actually makes us understand that probably the Egyptians arrived from the area of the present Libya, because that is a place where people lived a very, very long time ago, even 12,000 BC. And some people think that the Egyptians arrived from that area. And the fact that both these people can actually mummify could be actually an evidence of this.
A common root.
Yeah, like a common root, yes. And the other one is that maybe of the pyramids, even if they're different pyramids.
And of later age also.
Yeah, later age, but who knows?
So this is a trepanation technique which was used to heal people who were sick. They believed in sickness like it was caused by evil spirits. So their technique was that of literally make a hole inside the head of that person in order for the evil spirit to be released from their mind, and in order to heal the person. So it was really a very shamanic cult. And they had a lot of techniques, very well done techniques. As you can see, the hole in this cranium is very regular, very circular, and the person here survived actually, because as we can see, the bone closed again.
Yes.
So the people survived.
Yeah, this was a practice that was used in ancient times. It was also found, for example, in Sardinia. And this kind of surgery it doesn't make doesn't make the people suffer. Okay, and so for this reason, because the person didn't suffer, was something that could be used in ancient days. Yes. Yeah, they were very good anyway at medicine. The shaman was also a medicine man, and they used the different plants that grow on these islands. And here we have a beautiful small statue that makes us understand that they also had rituals and a worship linked to Mother Earth, because this is actually the representation of Mother Earth. And it is known as Tara, because it's the name actually of the village where this kind of representation and artifacts was found.
Idols. Yeah. They found a lot of idols of this shape.
Yeah. And it's really linked to a very important worship of Mother Earth, which was very common everywhere in ancient days. It's beautifully made.
Yeah, they actually have different gods and goddesses, not only Mother Earth. They were worshipping also stars, the sun and the moon, and various natural entities in gods, in a god's shape, with a god name, but it was a natural.
Natural spirituality. It was also, we know, very much connected with the sky. So as Enrico was saying, the sun and the moon and some of the planets that are especially visible at that latitude. For example, Venus anyway was...
and some constellations also.
Yes. And Canopo.
Canopo. Yeah, the star Canopo.
The star Canopo, which is really visible there. And the skies there are really amazing, I can tell you.
I think it is called canope in English.
Canope, yeah. And the skies are just so beautiful there, you know. It's even nowadays, they're so clear at night, it's just beautiful.
It's one of the clearest skies in the whole Europe.
Yeah.
I think the clearest one, also because there are a lot of observatories in the Canary Islands.
Anyway, these people so had their spirituality, and here you have a view of the island of Tenerife, which is a very powerful place. The energy of this island is very powerful. You see that the shape is a bit like that of a triangle, and so with
an arrow,
and
it's
so
a very energetical shape in sacred geometry and in radionics.
And the other reason why this island is so powerful is because the volcano of this island, Teide, is very, very high. It's 3,718 meters high. And there is a part of this volcano which is actually underwater, so the volcano is much higher than that. So it's really like a very powerful antenna, giving energy to the whole island. And so you can actually feel this energy when you are there, very strong, young energy.
It is something like 7,000 meters if you count from the oceanic floor, from the oceanic floor. So it is the highest volcano in the world, if you count the submarine part.
Yeah, you can imagine how powerful this island can be. And here, the tribe that live here, because as we were saying, they came from the same route from northern Africa, but on each island, the tribe had a different name. So here they were called Guanches, Guanches, the Guanches people. And these people actually built, as we were saying, some peculiar buildings, pyramids, step pyramids, that archaeological speaking, they were built in between 800 and 1000 AD. So much later actually than the pyramids that we find in Egypt. But they are beautifully made, really beautiful constructed, as you can see. Here in Guimar, it's a very luxurious valley in Tenerife. We have a group of pyramids. They were built all together, and so this was it's a complex and
very big complex.
It was an important ceremonial place area in those days.
It's a very big terraced area with these pyramids inside, but the whole area is man-made and terraced to make sacred squares to celebrate their rituals and also games, and to have to feast together also.
Yeah, celebrate.
Yeah.
These pyramids are especially connected to the cults of the sun, and the sun was very, very important to them. It had a special name, Majek. Yes. Majek.
The divinity of the sun, yes. Here in the Canary Islands.
Yeah, and of course these are very sunny islands. There is a lot of sun all year round, and we are actually close to the Tropic of Cancer. And so, yeah, the sun is really very bright. And here you can see that they were beautifully shaped, and these stones were put together without using any kind of
mortar.
Yeah.
So it's a dry technique.
Yeah, just like the same as in Sardinia, building nurages, for example. Yes. And here we see the whole area, and so you can see very well that there were like places, areas to celebrate and have special rituals, dances, and games, and so on. And these pyramids actually are still very much debated. There's a debate going on. It has been going on for years, because the official archaeologists do not want to consider them pyramids. To them, they are just like terraces for cultivation. And actually, we have to say that it's true. There were terraces for cultivation also made with this kind of technique. But if you look at the terraces, there are still some surviving there. They are not at all shaped and in the same way, so you can actually see that these are pyramids. But
of course,
the archaeologists still do not want to consider them pyramids, you know. And for this reason, some of them, unfortunately, are abandoned, completely abandoned. And I think that if the thing keeps going on like this, in a few years, these pyramids, those which are abandoned, will be completely destroyed. Fortunately, the pyramids of Guimar have been preserved, and there is actually a museum there, so the whole area is preserved, and so this is really a good thing. And okay, what we have to underline about these pyramids, that we were saying they are connected with the cults of the sun, and these pyramids were actually researched and studied by one of the most famous archaeoastronomers
in Europe.
He is a Spanish archaeoastronomer. Actually, he is from Tenerife, from the University of La Laguna, and he studied these pyramids, and it was found that they had a very precise alignment at the solstices. And so this confirms that these are pyramids and of course not terraces for agricultural use, because you wouldn't align to the sun terraces used for agriculture purposes and not to precise alignments like the solstice. So here, yeah, we can see the alignments that at the summer solstice takes place at sunset.
Yeah.
And at the winter solstice, it's the other way around. It takes place at the sunrise. And what is really peculiar about this place is that the sun here sets behind some mountains, and it sets twice, because first sets behind a peak.
Here.
Yes.
There's a peak hiding the sun the first time.
Yes, so the sun disappears, but then it reappears behind another peak. So we have two kinds of...
it reappears here, exactly.
Yeah, we have a double sunset. And this must have been something so magical if you think in front of the eyes of these people, you know, who couldn't actually probably explain themselves why it happened twice. So anyway, it has something magical, because we have to think that ancient people had an idea of nature as being somehow magical, in fact. And so they aligned this, which is the most important pyramid of this complex, towards the sun at sunset, and then sunrise on the 21st of December. The sun rises from the sea, from the ocean, and then you have this beautiful alignment.
It exactly rises inside this. Well, actually, those are the stairs to climb up the monument, but it was perfectly made in order for the sun to enter inside this this carving, let's say, like this shape.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And of course, this proves that these are pyramids, you know. And yeah, every year they organize for the summer solstice. The museum is open to go and have a look at this beautiful alignment. And every time there is an alignment, you have very powerful energy. The energy enhances, amplifies every time we have a specific alignment towards a sacred building. And anyway, the energy is all the year round very, very nice in this place. The energy of these pyramids is powerful, but at the same time very balancing. And so if you go there and you meditate for a while, you will feel a feeling of peacefulness, really peacefulness. It's really beautiful. We love these pyramids. And here on the same island, we have this other pyramid, but this, as we were saying, many of them are abandoned. This is abandoned. And this pyramid is connected actually to their ancestors, because the pyramid, in this case, looks towards
the bay.
Towards a bay, the bay where the first people arrived from Africa
in the 5th century BC. So when Spanish came, they asked them where they came from, and they could remember they had myths about their ancestors coming from this bay with boats. So they decided actually to come from Africa, and they built this monument to honor their ancestors. And the their traditions that passed on from generations to generation to them.
We have to say that actually the Spanish writers who arrived on the islands around the 15th century, only the 15th century, and they wrote that, they reported that there were pyramids in on the Canary Islands. They reported this, but still the archaeologists do not want to they do not want to recognize these pyramids. Here we have a total view of this beautiful pyramid. Now it is actually really inside the tropical nature of these islands. It's beautiful. And yes, and there are also myths about the Canary Islands being Atlantis. Yes, because of course they are in the middle of the Atlantic Oceans. So there are actually people who think that these islands were Atlantis. And especially because Plato, the philosopher, the Greek philosopher, when he wrote about the location of Atlantis, actually he wrote about a place behind
the columns of Hercules. And the Canary Islands are just after the columns of Hercules and a bit south. And so it is possible that these islands are actually the mountain peaks of the islands of Atlantis. So when the water submerged the whole island, only the peaks survived out of the waters. And these peaks should be the eight couldn't be these eight islands of Tenerife, La Gomera, La Palma, Lanzarote.
Who knows? Still a mystery. We still have to find the location actually of Atlantis. And here another view of this pyramid. You see that it's partly damaged already. Yeah, beautiful. And of course, finding these pyramids on the Canary Islands was a way to find a link between the pyramids built in Africa and the pyramids of America. Yeah. Right, and then
we also have rock altars all around these islands.
And some of them, like this one, is again connected with the sun. We have, you see, like a circle, and and then different, you see, like different parts. It is divided into different parts, and it could remind us of the cycle of the sun every year.
Actually, some of these lines are really aligned to the solar movement. The two solstices and the two equinoxes.
And you see, this is actually placed in a very spectacular location. Spectacular. In between some gorges and very deep gorges, and you have a view on over the ocean and some of the islands. So they always chose in ancient days spectacular places for their sacred sites.
Those were called almogaren. So they are sacred places where they went to pray their gods and their natural elements. And this is quite a big site with different actually man-made monuments. This was not really a tomb, but we think it was something about another alignment. It is called cysts in archaeological terms, but this also is aligned. And those are sacred, let's say, potholes that were used to give offerings. So they were used to chant or pronounce magic formulas or cry to their gods and offer milk, goat milk, and butter and other gofio, other things very important for them. Of course, food, because they were really in food for them was not granted, so it was very important. They always used something of value for them to give to their ancestors or the spirits or the gods. And this is a tomb, probably a tomb on the right, a tomb of some a chief leader probably, or a very important priest, because it was it was buried in a very high energy sacred spiritual place.
And here you see the location, so you can see
how high it is. Very not steep. Only energetically speaking, but also physically speaking.
Yeah, it's really amazing. This is what we like about the Canary Islands, spectacular places. Yes. Okay, we can go on. And again, another view. Yeah, you see the village down there. And panoramic view, beautiful panoramic view.
And there are some carvings on this terrace, which are also aligned. There's they mark the exact north and other directions. And there's also a butterfly, as you see it in purple. I've remarked it with the PowerPoint. It's not painted, of course. It's a natural stone. And this is a very peculiar symbol, a spiritual symbol, which we can find all over the world. You can call it the butterfly or the clepsydra. Butterfly is like a death and rebirth symbol. Like the caterpillar must close himself inside its shell and die in order to be reborn again in a beautiful animal like butterfly is. So humans need to spiritually die in order to be reborn as shamans, as powerful beings, as enlightened persons. Yes. Also, this symbol is linked to the two solstices. So it is marking the cardinal point where the sun is at its topmost, strongest position. So it is linked, it's a symbol linked to the strength of the sun and the strength of life.
Yeah, again.
And this is a triangle marking the exact north. Of course, this is a place where astronomical observations were done. It was very high near the sky, so they needed to have the exact north in order to understand the other directions.
And here we have a kind of grid. Yes, another sacred mark.
Probably it was reproducing, we don't know, but reproducing the Hartmann grid, which is an energetical grid enveloping our planet. It's a magnetic grid.
And then another peculiar kind of monument of these people was the so-called Tagoro. Of course, this comes from the language of the Aboriginal people. And this was their meeting place, their meeting hut. And it was built in a circular way. And this is typical of ancient people. When they would meet, they would meet always in a circle so that they could actually always see the others. Yeah, and this is placed again in a very spectacular area.
You can see a rock in the center.
You see the area, how beautiful it is.
And the rock in the center is was put there on purpose. It is shaped, and as you can see, the other rocks around the wall of the monument are roughly made. The central rock was instead smooth and rounded. It was a representation of the god Majek again, so they wanted to have the spirit of Majek inside their monument when they were taking important decisions for the villages.
Yeah, and for this reason we know from the reports, again from the Spanish reports, that during these meetings they would always call the spirit of their ancestors to be present in the meeting. So every time they had to take decisions, they always called for the ancestors to be there.
So it means that the chief shamans was taking place inside the council hut, not in name of himself, but in name of the ancestor spirits. He was really entering trance inside the council in order to give speech to the elders. So the chief leader of the tribe could speak face to face to the ancestors in order to take decisions. So all the ancient chief leaders, spirits, were talking through the shamans in order, and participated even 200, 300 years after they have died. They were participating again in the life of the community. It was really, the spirits were part of their living culture.
Here we have another view. Another one. Yes. And before we finish, we want to show you this tree. We were talking about it when we were talking about mummification, because they use some parts of this tree in the process of embalming. But this beautiful and peculiar tree of the islands, of these islands, was also used for other reasons. It was used anyway in medicine, because the lymph, which is actually red, had some specific properties, and so it was used in many different ways. It is a very beautiful tree. As you see, this is a very, very, very old one. It is thousands of years old. It's really big. If you have a look at the people, you see the proportion in comparison with the tree
next to the wall.
And it has such a powerful energy. You can actually feel it from very far. It's a beautiful tree. I love it. And so it was a shamanic remedy that it was used in many different ways. Nowadays they make a very good liquor. It's called the blood
of the drago.
Of the drago, the blood of the drago.
The name of the plant is called the drago, so the dragon. So it's dragon blood.
Yes. So, of course, it was a very important kind of tree, probably worshipped, because we have to think that those people in those days worshipped trees just like other elements of nature. We have different views. You see, it's wonderful, very special.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and so we have to finish here. And of course, next week when we meet again, we will go on with the Canary Islands, because there is a lot to say. Of course, it wouldn't have been possible to tell you everything about these islands just in one episode, let's say. So we will have to go on talking to you about these beautiful islands. So see you next week, and yes, have a good evening, and see you again, discovering again together with us these beautiful islands, the Canary Islands.
See you.
Bye, and thanks for watching.
Thanks again.